Someone is crazy about you, not in a passing way, not because you happen to appear at the right moment, and not because they simply enjoy your company. Their feelings run much deeper than they are willing to admit, but there is something standing between the two of you. Before we continue, pause for just a moment. The person who quietly entered your mind as you heard those words may not have appeared there by coincidence. Whether this message reminds you of someone from your past, someone in your present, or someone whose silence has become louder than their words, there may be more happening beneath the surface than either of you fully understands. Welcome back to the Love and Relationship Lab ***. If you're drawn to psychology, relationships, emotional intelligence, and the timeless wisdom of Carl Jung, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every video is designed to help you understand not only others, but yourself. Now, let's begin. One of the biggest misunderstandings about forbidden relationships is that people assume they are built on fantasy. They imagine these connections are nothing more than temporary attraction or emotional excitement. But in many cases, the exact opposite is true. Forbidden relationships often become powerful precisely because they are never allowed to unfold naturally. Instead of being expressed openly, they remain hidden beneath restraint. Instead of growing through conversation, they grow through silence. Instead of fading with distance, they often deepen because they remain unfinished. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious mind contains far more influence over our lives than most people realize. He famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Think about that carefully. Not every powerful emotion is spoken. Not every meaningful connection is acknowledged. Sometimes, the strongest feelings are the ones a person spends every day trying to suppress. This may be exactly what is happening here. This person didn't wake up one morning deciding to fall for you. It happened quietly. Perhaps you were simply another face they noticed. Then, someone they respected. Someone whose conversations lingered longer than expected. Someone whose presence brought an unusual sense of peace. Without realizing it, they began looking forward to seeing you. Your voice became familiar. Your smile stayed in their memory. Ordinary moments slowly became meaningful. Then, one day, they realized something they never intended to feel. You mattered. Something small reminds them of you. A song, a familiar place, a phrase you once said, a simple color. Suddenly, you're back in their thoughts again. Not because they're trying to remember, because the unconscious refuses to let unfinished emotions disappear. This explains why certain people seem impossible to forget. It's not always because the relationship itself was extraordinary. Sometimes it's because it never reached completion. The human mind naturally seeks resolution. When something meaningful remains unfinished, it quietly continues searching for an ending. That's why they sometimes think about you at random moments. Not because they're choosing to, because their mind continues returning to what it never fully understood. You may experience something similar. Perhaps you've gone weeks without speaking, yet Suddenly, they appear in your thoughts without warning. You wonder why. You tell yourself you've moved on. Then somehow, they're there again. This doesn't necessarily mean fate is sending signs. It doesn't automatically mean you're destined to be together. But it does reveal something important. Unresolved emotional experiences leave lasting impressions on the mind, especially when genuine connection existed. Jung believed meaningful relationships transform both people involved. He wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances." Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say both people stay together forever. He said both are transformed. That's the real power of certain relationships. Whether they continue or not, neither person remains exactly the same afterward. Perhaps you've already noticed this. Maybe your standards have changed. You no longer settle for shallow conversations. You recognize emotional depth more easily. You crave honesty instead of performance. Perhaps this person unknowingly awakened something inside you that had been asleep for years, and the same may be happening within them, even if they've never admitted it, even if they never will, because some people spend years trying to convince themselves they feel nothing, while quietly carrying someone in their heart every single day. And this is where the first truth becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't simply about romance. It's about recognition. Two people seeing something real in each other that neither expected to find. The question isn't whether the feelings exist. The question is whether fear will continue to speak louder than honesty. Because eventually, every person reaches a moment where silence becomes heavier than truth. And when that moment arrives, everything begins to change. Of emotion, it's blocked by circumstance. Perhaps one of you is already committed elsewhere. Perhaps family expectations create impossible barriers. Maybe cultural traditions, religious beliefs, professional boundaries, or personal responsibilities make acting on these emotions feel dangerous. The obstacle isn't always another person. Sometimes it's the life they've spent years building. They've created routines, responsibilities, expectations, a version of themselves everyone recognizes. And then you appeared, not to destroy that life, but to quietly question whether it truly reflects who they are. That's what makes this so unsettling for them. Because you're not simply someone they like. You represent possibility. And possibility can be frightening, especially when it asks someone to examine choices they've never questioned before. Carl Jung often spoke about the masks people wear. He called this the persona, the identity we present to the world, the responsible employee, the devoted partner, the dependable friend, the person everyone expects us to be. But underneath that carefully maintained image lives another self, one that longs, one that dreams, one that quietly asks difficult questions. Meeting someone who awakens that hidden self can feel deeply unsettling, not because it's wrong, but because it exposes parts of ourselves we've spent years keeping hidden. This is why their silence should not automatically be mistaken for indifference. Sometimes silence is protection. Not protection from you, protection from themselves. because they understand something you may not realize. The moment they begin speaking honestly, everything changes. Once certain words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. Once certain truths are admitted, pretending becomes impossible. So instead, they remain quiet. They convince themselves distance is safer. They tell themselves the feelings will eventually disappear. That time will solve everything. That eventually they'll forget. But feelings rarely disappear simply because we ignore them. Yes, someone is crazy about you, but this relationship feels forbidden. Why? In conclusion, this connection carries strong hidden feelings, but outside pressures. Responsibilities and fear of consequences are keeping it restrained. What feels forbidden may still be deeply real, and the future depends on whether silence continues or the truth is finally faced. Thank you for watching. Do me a favor. Share with someone who needs to hear this. Please subscribe to this channel to help us grow together and feel loved.